Okay, we will call to order this meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting. It is Monday, April 15th, 2024, 5:34 p.m. Karen, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Flores,
Present.
Commissioner Berry,
Present.
Commissioner Boyer,
Present.
Commissioner Garrison,
Present.
Commissioner Myers,
Present.
and Commissioner DeVay has to be excused this evening.
Did everyone receive the minutes from last meeting? Has everyone had the opportunity to read them? No.
Not really. Like, we're surprised this evening, so.
Thank you. As you guys are looking over them, do you see anything that needs changed? Any alterations?
Not really. Yes.
Found some on the website today.
Okay, nice.
There's some rock and those you can print out.
Okay.
All right. Then at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. If there's any alterations, Jeff made the motion. Is there a second? Yep. Miranda seconds. All in favor? Any opposed? Minutes passed. Does not appear that we have any visitors or public comments, at least not present. So we'll get to the staff report.
Perfect. So I won't talk about this too much, but I did include a sheet with just some resources that you folks could take a look at. Feel free to explore those in your leisure. I will say I had the idea today that that moving forward, it might just be a good idea to sort of take one of those resources and like look at a section one at a time, so we sort of move our way through the documents, just so we're sort of aware of some of those resources, and just as a way to do some education, so we're up to date and we know the best practices and everything like that. So, I think that those resources are pretty much what we use. I did note at the bottom of the page that you folks could discuss further means to raise awareness of the district. I haven't had a chance to sit down with our website person yet to make changes to the website. But we are planning on doing that here in the future, and I have been trying to work on the map, just to tweak the map a little bit. I did have a draft ready for this meeting, but in looking at it, I thought, you know what, I think I can present this information just even a little bit better than this. It's gonna take a little bit more refinement to actually get it to a point where I think it's understandable to the vast majority of the community, so.
Okay, so then, is that when we go to the new business then?
Can I ask a question for Ernest to make a statement?
Yeah.
I took some time today just to look through the website. Should we just email you things that we find or suggestions?
That would be great, yeah. That would be great. Anything that you find on the website that you would like changed, please send it along. And I do think, I have talked with, we have two folks that work on the website. I have talked with both of them about just trying to really make his history easier to get to pretty much from anywhere on the page. We are talking about it. You know, it's one of those things where you get into a website and all of a sudden there's gonna be stuff that we're having to move around in a number of different places. So that's why I haven't gotten to it yet. But we are planning on doing it here in the near future, so. So yeah, any thoughts that you have would be great.
Before we move on, there is something that we talked about, and I can't remember if it was last month or not. There was talk about one of the buildings over on Monmouth, and that was brick dust on the sidewalks. Something about Curry's brought it up. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. It was related to a sign and installation of the sign. We have worked with the property owner about that.
Okay, and so the building is in good shape. It's not gonna fall apart.
No, it's not gonna fall over.
Okay. So it's not been damaged in any way.
I mean, the best practice for sign is to drill into the mortar joints and not the brick itself.
Right.
We try and let folks know that, but I mean, even today I was looking through the original designation document, and what's amazing is, and I really encourage you folks, look at that designation document from 1989. It's that third bullet point down under codes, plans, and maps. You'll see historic preservation, and you'll see, Karen, can you actually go to that?
What's that? Is it in the agenda?
It's up, yeah, so it's a page or 2 pages above that. So just to show you where that's at, so, that third bullet right there, click on that link. And hopefully it goes there, yeah, so, and then the historic preservation documents. And then 1989. And then scroll way to the end of that document, like as the pictures are starting, and then rotate it, it's probably clockwise. Yeah, a little before that. Because it's amazing to me that when we look at downtown, you know, downtown has come a long way since the 1980s, and historic preservation, you know, like the downtown was fairly damaged by people doing various things for a long time to the buildings, and over time, the buildings have been restored in an amazing way. Yeah, just a couple more.
A lot of it was just due to just a couple of people too, like Dan.
Yeah. Sorry, Karen. Just a couple more about that. Right, I mean, no, a couple more before that. All right, now we're really getting close, I know it. Alright.
Yeah, we're gonna run.
All right, so, no, so yeah, let's look at that. No, go even a couple more up. So yeah, look at that one right there, or that one's fine too.
Oh, I thought you wanted the Cooper
Well,
one.
that's Taylor's.
No, I think you wanted the one before.
So,
Taylor's.
Did you
so
want-
go down to, let's
Well,
look
like,
at
if you
this
look
one.
at the arena.
Perfect, no, that one. So you look at this, this is a vet building, right? This is River, the gallery, right? This is probably arena right there, right? Check that out. This is where Indy Commons is now. Look, the transom windows are covered, that whole facade is covered. This was where Dan Weaver did the project right there. Just notice like stuff like this, the box signs, right, you know, just so much of that stuff, when you look at it, it's gone from downtown now. There's more, well, I mean, not this building here, but this building especially has recreated the big windows right there. You look on the other side too, it's even more stark. Maybe go up 2 images, Karen, because when I was looking at it as we're talking about signs, yeah, look at this. Look at it. Sign here, a box sign really high on the building, a box sign right there, a box sign right here, a box sign right here. And so just a whole bunch of signage that just wasn't even complimentary to the buildings. I think it's really amazing. So we can ask the question, hey, is installing signage damaging the building? Well, shoot, they installed even bigger signs way back in the day to this. I mean, this is obviously pre-1989. And when I was looking at these images today, I think I was really struck by the fact that, man, downtown has come a long way. And we're just restoring some of the historic character. I mean, look at the front of the Cooper building, right? That is a completely different storefront. So yeah.
Is that a telephone?
It is, yeah.
Now that's an antique, we should have kept that.
Yeah, that's right. I will just point out, even the sidewalks are smaller, probably right there too. So it's just, I think sometimes we can forget how far we've come. So I saw that today, I thought, well, that's really interesting, especially just given the conversation regarding science. I was like, man, that's a whole bunch of signage, especially that signage has come a long way in downtown.
True, and we know better now.
Yeah.
So we should keep on it and
Yeah.
make sure that.
Yeah, all right, so, any other thoughts about anything sort of from the past that, I'm sorry, that was a big detour. I just we were talking about signs, and so I thought showing that sign picture was pretty interesting. Yeah,
Those QR codes work really well around town, and it seems like it would be possible to have a lot of little bite-sized pieces of historical information that relate to specific parts of town, where it would be possible to put up a laminated sign temporarily that would highlight them. Somebody did a QR code. As an example, a guy who was doing metal detecting on the corner of 3rd and C in front of our house found Chinese coins from the 1700s there.
wow,
And just to use those as leverage to bring in some history, like a paragraph, something that would be really easy to do.
yeah,
This could be done through the museum pretty easily.
yeah, no, that's a good idea, and, yeah, no, that's a good idea.
That's cool.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have the coins?
No, he's got them.
Oh,
Well, I mean, he did that.
well, I know they did the work, but
That's really neat. So yeah, so those are the resources. We can go to the new business now if you would like.
Yeah, business is there.
All right, so, so the first thing to talk about is mural standards. We had gotten a variety of requests right back to back about murals. Like, so how murals work right now is they go to the city council. The city council can either approve or deny of a mural, but they don't actually have any standards by which to judge the mural. And so I take murals to the city council and I say, hey, here's a request for a mural. My assumption is that they're generally allowed unless they violate a clear code provision from someplace else. That is, they would probably be denied if they're a sign and they're violating the sign ordinance, i.e. they're too big or whatever it might be, or there's something like the historic preservation code and they're like trying to paint it on brick. I would also recommend denial to the city council in a case like that. After a few of those going through, the city council was like, why don't you guys actually come up with some mural standards so we don't have to do this every time. So that's what this is right here. In front of you is a draft set of mural standards. These would be a completely new section of the code. They would replace that thing that sends them to the city council, and it would specifically send them when it's in the historic district to you folks, and when it's elsewhere in the community to the planning commission. You'll see how this sort of worked is Karen actually was kind enough to send out a listserv to all her city recorder buddies, and they sent all these various codes, and I took a look through all of them and sort of took the good things that I could find from every code and sort of mashed them together. This is specifically based a lot on like Redmond and somebody who was doing something similar to Redmond. And I can't remember which one came first. So you'll see it starts off with a purpose and scope. It sort of defines what the code's trying to do. It talks about exemptions. It says if it's a City of Independence sponsored project, you can go through, you don't have to go through this process. It has definitions. The definitions include applicant, mural, mural agreement, which we'll get into in a little bit, mural committee, which again is you folks when it's in the historic preservation district, or the planning commission outside of the district, and then owner. There's a violation section, so essentially you can't, you have to go through this process. That's what that's really talking about. There's a little code typo. I noticed it after I had printed this out. Allowed mural locations. This essentially says they're allowed in basically every zone, primarily in the commercial zone and the industrial zone and residential zones. You can only put them on like a common building of a sort of coordinated housing development or or like an apartment complex, you could put it on the common building of the apartment complex. You just can't put them on any old building in residential areas. Any questions about that? Does that make sense? The place I was thinking of specifically was Colonia Amistad, which is all those townhouses off of Gun Club Road. Beautiful complex. They've got a beautiful mural sort of on the side of a building, and you know, sort of looking at that, it's like that's completely appropriate in that instance. So that's what that's trying to achieve with that section as it's written. And then historic district says specifically, no mural shall be allowed on unpainted brick or shall be used to cover a historic element or detailing on a historic structure. So the idea of that is you can't paint brick, unpainted brick, or you can't take a piece of plywood and then like use it to like cover up something that is a nice element of the building. An example of something like that is the River Gallery. They put up a nice piece of art over their covered transit windows. If those windows hadn't been covered, if they were still uncovered transit windows, we wouldn't want them to take that and put it over their uncovered transit windows, right? Because that would be blocking a historic element or a feature. Another thing is, you know, imagine a downtown building has a nice detailing somewhere, you know, it's got a nice sort of column or something like that. We wouldn't want to have the column covered by the piece of art, you know, if somebody painted a piece of plywood and then put it on the building, right? That makes sense. That's what that's trying to achieve. The mural standards, it just sort of goes through, it talks about generally approved subjects, how they should be placed on a building, allowed surfaces, what sort of surfaces are appropriate to paint a mural on, and then things like how is this going to be maintained long-term? Like, let's make sure that we're considering not just the painting of it now, but how it's gonna look in 3 to 5 years. Specifically a prohibition on advertising. It talks about lighting. That lighting section is intended to make sure that somebody just doesn't take an LED screen and put it on the side of a building. Just because it seems like potentially you could do something like that. And then prohibition on compensation. The idea there is that somebody is not paying you for the right to put a mural on the side of the building. So I'm thinking, let's imagine I saw one of these in Portland. There's this big old mural on the side of the building, and it's a pretty mural. Mountains, all this sort of stuff. A family around eating bread. It was an advertisement for some bread company. Generally, that's what we're trying to not have happen with this. We would like it to be more about art than advertising, if that makes sense. Questions about that? Thoughts about that? The subject question was something that we definitely talked about when I showed this to the Planning Commission. We're not trying to regulate specifically what the content of the mural is, but we would like to give generally like a framework for the subjects that the murals could address. And so you'll see on page 10 of your packet, the mural shall highlight the city of Independence and depict a component of the history, natural environment, or local culture of the community. Murals may be based on one or more of the following themes: local history, regional commerce, local agricultural, local landscapes, ecosystems, or other similar subjects. So really trying to sort of say, hey, this is what we're specifically wanting with some of these murals. Questions, thoughts about that? Okay. And then the mural process is essentially how the mural would be reviewed, so it talks about what details to submit, and I see another typo thing. What details to submit as part of the application, and then how the review occurs. Basically, the review would include a public hearing before you folks. The notice of the public hearing would be posted on the project site 20 days in advance of the public hearing. And we wouldn't treat it like a land use decision. It would be a chance for folks to come and give their thoughts about the mural. And then any decision could be appealed to the city council during a regularly scheduled council meeting.
But because it's not land use, it wouldn't go any further than city council?
Well, it wouldn't go through the normal sort of LUBA appeal process, which is Land Use Board of Appeals process. If a final decision can always be appealed to the next level, we're just saying specifically
But not totally, but.
that next step would not be to the Land Use Board of Appeals. That's what that not a land use application means. And then the final section is, so once it would be approved, there would be a mural agreement sort of established between the city and the owner and the mural painter. And it just basically would line out, hey, this is the intent for the long-term maintenance and any sort of alteration of this mural that would occur. As part of that process, we would also require something called a Visual Artist Rights Act waiver. And the idea of that is basically saying the artist in the preparation of the mural knows that they are signing over their rights to that mural, so they can't say in the future, let's say, if the building owner wants to do something to the building that, you can't do anything with that building because my art is on it, right? And so they're essentially waiving their rights to preservation of that art for the long term. So that's what that Visual Artist Rights Act do, and it's specifically all rights of attribution and integrity under the Visual Artist Rights Act. There are instances where, folks have done graffiti in the building, even without the consent of the property owner. The property owner has tried to demolish the building or whatever, and then the graffiti artists come back and have said, what, my art's in that, you can't demolish that. And so this is specifically trying to anticipate that there might be changes to buildings in the future, and any sort of artwork done to the building does not somehow transfer ownership of the wall to another person. So that's what that's intended to do.
This looks very thorough. You did a good job.
Cool.
Fred, where'd you come up, I don't see any place where it says the size of the.
Yeah, so specifically it talks about scale, but it doesn't define a scale at this point. We have seen there are different approaches out there where certain communities have defined smaller scale, hey, it can be this big on a wall, whereas others have allowed entire walls to be covered. And thinking about it and sort of talking about it here, we didn't see a reason to define the scale of the mural. There are some communities, and I'm thinking specifically of Springfield. Springfield has a whole bunch of murals, including some very nice ones that are full-blown entire wall size. And so we didn't in preparing this, we didn't see a reason to define the scale.
Limited, okay. So does that also include those little, flags or whatever that's on lamp posts downtown? Doesn't have anything to do with those.
It seems to me that, I mean, painting a mural is a big deal. And anybody who would do that would be able to provide a resume.
Yeah,
Additionally, most of those contracts do include a section to maintain the mural. So if it gets graffitied or something like that, you have a term contract for that person to come out and fix it.
yeah.
It seems like that would be a reasonable thing to include in anybody, any agreement to put up a mural.
Yeah, and that's really what we're wanting to get to that point where there's a whole level of, essentially like either forethought that goes into it, but then also like, hey, we've got the wherewithal, we've thought about all of these things, so we can get to that point. So you'll see on page 12 of the packet, 2D, right there about middle of the page, the media proposed is appropriate to ensure the mural's longevity and durability, and there is a plan for mitigating graffiti and/or UV rays through design and/or UV graffiti coating. And so, like, just really trying to get to the sentence right off the bat, like, hey, we want this to stay around, so let's make sure that we're planning on this for the long term. That's also specifically what we're trying to get to with some of the maintenance and duration long-term, with a mural agreement at the end of the document.
And there are some things that are done with light now that are actually really cool. There was a great Oregon art beat by a guy named Craig Winslow who projected onto the side of buildings and was able to uncover all of the phases of previous murals that had been put on the side of the building, so they kind of peeled through them over time. And so it'd be nice to have some sort of a mechanism for allowing that type of thing.
So, and that's just a projection on the side of it.
Yeah, and he uses different wavelengths of light to peel away the existing murals and see what's below them. And I know there are a number of places in town where that's been done.
Wow,
Craig Winslow.
I will look it up. I hope I can see that.
He worked at Astoria on some of those buildings there, and they're really, really cool.
That's cool. I do think that your point, and it wouldn't really address, this wouldn't really address it, but I think the idea of projecting something on the side of a wall is always a cool idea. When I lived up in Spokane, there was the old Fox Theater. They would project like old movies on the side of the Fox Theater, which is a cool thing. I don't really know how we would regulate that. Shining it across the street, and it probably wasn't a big deal so long as it didn't get in the eyes of the motorists. I don't know. I'll give some thought to that. I'll see what I can think of.
Are we limiting on how many, like, say, how many are going to be in a certain block? I mean, we don't want a lot of, I can't see this happening, but, there's just.
Yeah, do you folks feel the need to limit the number to a block? I think that in the downtown it's probably different than in the rest of the community. There's probably not a significant need to limit it in perhaps the rest of the community. In downtown, do you feel like there's a need?
There can't be more than a dozen or so suitable spots for murals in this town anyway, because most of the buildings are brick.
Yeah.
so many windows again,
Yeah.
like you just said, you know, there's so many windows that have been restored. So I'm thinking, like, I know there's a mural in the alley, just off C Street, which is fine. You know, the murals could be on the backs of the buildings downtown, but I don't really see them being on the fronts of the buildings at all.
Yeah, yeah, and I tend to have the same thought. We haven't gotten many requests for downtown. The one that we did get is not gonna happen at this point, but they were, at the old city hall building, there was gonna be a person who was gonna put like a bunch of flowers it was, on a piece of plywood and attach it to the side of the building. So that was that one. I mean, we could take a step and say, hey, we don't want murals on historic buildings. Or buildings that are contributing to the historic district, on the front, on a visible side of
Right.
building, a building, well, no, it would be a downtown building contributing to well, I mean, we could say any contributing building to the historic district.
You know, it would be nice on the backside, on the alley side, it would be nice, I mean,
Pretty up the alley.
yes.
But would a board even be, like, a mural, to me, is painted on the building, it's not removable. So would flowers on a board that's then attached to the building, are we considering that a mural?
Yeah, and that's how we do it right now too. We consider it a wall graphic is how we call it now. And so like the river gallery, their one that they did, that's not painted, it was they printed a piece of art that someone had done, and they put it on the front of the building. We considered that at the time a mural, and even the definition of mural in here would consider that a mural. Hand-painted, hand-tiled, or digitally printed image on the exterior wall of the building where the wall or surface is either sitting on property or has a mural agreement. Viewable from another property or right away, so yeah.
Would
I guess I
art
think of
be
the exterior
considered
walls.
murals? Like window art?
No, window art,
Like-
no.
Like a orange one or anything,
No, I think we would still consider that like part of the business signage. Yeah, so like Umbersburg always has window
Yeah.
art, and so we've always just considered that part of the business signage.
Cities that have figured out how to do murals well really add some vibrancy to it. I know Baker is a place where there are just absolutely fabulous murals. So it seems like whatever process takes place, it would be really nice to be able to, highlight that possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds good.
Did you say there was an increased interest in murals lately? Or
There was.
applicants, or-
Yeah, there was. We had never seen a mural application come through, and then I think we had 3 or 4 in the course of like a year or 2. And so after the 4th one, I think, the city council was like, would you come up with standards? So we don't have to, or I think that they were most concerned with getting something that they didn't particularly like and not really having a way to say no or any criteria by which to review something. So this is trying to set some parameters for the review.
So are there murals that are up and coming from town?
I can't remember where they all are. I know that a couple of them were out at Divine Distillers.
All the way down there.
Which is outside of the district.
Which is outside of the district, yeah. But I mean, even in a case like that, you know, there's lessons learned from stuff like that as well. So trying to address those things up front.
Well, and I'm gonna say, like, as a business owner, I want, like, What's the reason that you couldn't have any of your business advertising in the murals at all, like even incorporated tastefully?
So as part of that, I talked with the planning commission, and how we have done it in the past is we sort of said, okay, we'll count your portion of the sign, of the mural as your sign. What the planning commission sort of came to after a fairly lengthy discussion is they like having that separate, partially because, say a business goes under, and you've got whatever business name you've put into the mural, all of a sudden that mural is obsolete and the advertising is integrated with the mural. So the example that I thought of was Sojourn was gone for a long time, and that banner above Sojourn still said Sojourn. And so it's sort of the same thing. And so what the planning commission sort of came to is, let's allow a mural, and if you want to do something where you're like attaching a sign that somehow works with the mural, you could do that. But then you could remove the sign and the mural could still stand by itself, if that makes sense. That was the thinking. It was specifically to try and not get a situation where a business goes under and then all of a sudden you've got a mural that says.
Well, actually, they still were there, they just were in the back, and as soon as they moved, they took the sign with them.
Oh.
Yep.
Gotcha, I didn't realize that.
Yep, they've been in the back the whole time.
Gotcha.
And doesn't it go to local history? Like,
That's what I was.
if the business was there,
Right,
then that becomes part of our local history. And I'm not a business owner, but it's the history of downtown, and so that would just be my question, if I was playing devil's advocate and I was someone trying to put up a mural and did own a business, I would say, well, my business is part of the history of Independence now. So if I were to retire or my business go under, that would not negate the fact that I was here and that my business existed. So.
Right. I mean, I guess I get that, too. I don't know, I think, I'm willing to go either way with that.
I mean, I totally get it can get out of hand, we don't want someone's just their name in it.
Well, that's part of the thing, is when you're trying to write the code
Yeah.
for this, you've got to stay away from the variables, right? Because then you could be biased.
One of the things that the planning commission thought too is like, you can use, images to depict your business, and you don't have to necessarily spell it. Like, I mean, you can still have your sign size allowances and all that sort of stuff, but you can use images. So you're a coffee shop, you've got, cups of coffee with like, I don't know, farmers picking something, and all of a sudden it's going to a table, right? You're showing the agricultural heritage, you're sort of telling the story of the valley and how it relates to your business. You can use stuff like that without then saying specifically the name of your business, like Fred's Coffee.
well, it would help too, if we could maybe do something like that with, and then maybe getting some of these sandwich boards off the sidewalks.
Well, so I mean, that's more of a sign code question. The sandwich boards, there's a lot of them. I mean, I get that. And it's even an enforcement issue. You're only supposed to have one per business. And so we see a lot more than one for certain businesses. They're also supposed to be professionally made. We see some that are clearly not professionally made. that being said, and they're only supposed to be out during the times that the businesses are open. That being said, you know, like some of the folks along C Street, I get why they put a whole bunch of stuff out at C Street. It almost seems to me that, you know, it might benefit from some sort of sign solution where it's like, hey, you know, some, like, rather than having 3 sandwich boards out there, put a pole out there and put a couple of business, like, let people put their business names on it and then point down C Street. I don't know. That's more of a sign code question though.
Probably so, but I was just thinking that, you know, if you have a mural with, as what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, having, sign. But anyway, okay, well,
So are we supposed to come up with answers to all of this right now, or do we have time to digest this?
You have time to digest it. So, the planning commission will probably, before the next, or, I will, I'll let you share any thoughts that you have at the next meeting, as well. And then, the planning commission will likely, and I wrote down their schedule, likely hear this maybe in July. Let's see. Yeah, likely in July, so we'll have a little bit of time.
so, yeah.
So then, do we move on to the variance? We've got-
Sure. So this next code section is something that, it exists right now. There's a lot of the lots in Hills Edition, which includes this main portion of downtown, basically from A to, I want to say G, maybe I.
I think it goes to I on that map.
Yeah, so we're, the Hills Edition, and can you show that map, Karen? It's on page 23. So when we look at Hills Edition right there, this variance applies to that white area. And so that's the vast majority of the historic district. There's some portions of the historic district, like out Monmouth Street, and then up Log Cabin, and all that, where it's not within the Hills Edition subdivision, but the vast majority of the district is in that Hills Edition. There's a variance right now that applies to that Hills Edition, and all of the lots were originally created to be 9,801 square feet. Right? And well, our minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet, and so you can't divide a lot in half. So way back in 1995, the city said, in Hills Edition, you can divide your lot in half so long as you go to the planning commission for a variance. And there's some criteria for the variance within the code right now. What the planning commission has recommended that the council do is expand that out just to a couple of additional areas where the same similar sort of lot size exists. So a funny thing is Hall's Edition, which is right next to Hills Edition, has the exact same lot size, but this variance does not apply to them. Also, Patterson's Edition, which has the exact same lot size, this variance is not allowed for them. So this code change right here would just expand it out a little bit. It also revised the criteria by which the variance is granted. So we were talking about expanding it out, and as we were talking about expanding it out, we got the sense, you know what, we're gonna create some lots that we don't actually like as part of this variance.
Yeah.
And part of the way that we were gonna create these lots is we were gonna actually require a flag lot. So every lot was gonna have to have access to the street in front of it. And I thought, well, that's really crazy because all of the lots in Hills Edition have an alley, right? A lot of them have access to 2 streets and an alley. And so rather than doing these flag lots out to main streets like 3rd or let's say 5th or whatever it might be, rather than doing that, let's not do that. Let's say the lot that you're creating has to be essentially rectangular in shape and has to have access either to a secondary street, so it would be on a corner, right? You have an access here, you have an access here. You can orient this building to this street, you can orient this building to this street. Let's either do that, or if you've got a middle lot, you can cut the thing in half. You have one oriented to the main street, you have one oriented to the alley. That's a big change from this, instead of allowing the flag lot to say you have to have essentially rectangular shaped lots. Also, we added some criteria to say you have to show how you're going to provide utilities to these lots. Any sort of, and also we added, if you're using the alley to access one of the lots in the middle of the block, you have to improve the alley to at least the edge of that property, so essentially it's paved, so you can get back to that lot. Also, just basic things like you have to be able to address them. That's essentially the change. The Planning Commission recommended that the City Council approve this. I took this to the City Council and they said, have you asked the Historic Preservation Commission about this? And I said, well, shoot, no. Partially because the variance already applies to the historic district, and this will actually create better lots. And they said, we would like you to ask the Historic Preservation Commission about it, and that's why this is in front of you now. Are there any thoughts about it?
So what do you mean it'll create better lots? What is better?
Instead of the flag lot.
Instead of a flag lot, it will create a rectangular lot. Now, a flag lot, will remember in your historic residential overlay standards, I'm gonna just draw this. Say this, I'm sorry, I should have done this.
Well, does anyone here not know what a flag lot is? Do you
So-
know what it is?
So essentially, how the standards are written right now is it requires the lot to essentially do this, where it takes access from the street and it creates what's called a flag lot. So there would be access to this lot right here. There would be access to this lot right here. And so what that does is it takes, this would be a 66-foot lot, and it then requires 2 access points, which say, if they're both 20 feet, 2/3 of the front of that lot, almost, is then driveway. That is not what we wanted, or not what we want. And in fact, in our historic residential overlay standards, we specifically say if you're building a new unit, take access from the back of the lot. And so this would address what we see as a deficiency in those original standards and say, rather than doing that, you could do something in like this, where you have a front lot and a rear lot, right? And you could take access from the alley. And I'm sorry, imagine this is this.
Same size.
Yeah, same size, but essentially you're just doing that, and you're having this take access here, this take access here.
From a real estate standpoint, five are less desirable.
Oh, yeah.
Brett, believe it or not, I don't have one of those lots like that. What I have is a lot that sticks out. It's probably, let's see,
Can we make sure that you're using your microphone on?
it's on, I just have a gravelly voice.
Probably need a little,
Or closer.
Yeah, so it's,
It's like a 40 by 40 plot, along with two other pieces of property.
right. Right, so Karen, can you show the PC Maps site that we're looking at? And I mean, it's interesting, you know, we used to have some interns that would come into a place I used to work, and I would just sit and I would try and impart like city philosophy to them as much as I could. And I'm like, what is the slowest moving portion of the city, right? And they're like, well, we don't know. Well, I would say essentially the way that the land was originally divided, it really is the slowest. It has such a fundamental, it's so fundamental to how a city grows. And I'll just sort of point out, scroll to show a little left if you can, Karen. So look, this is one of those original lots, and you can see these are both, I bet you if we clicked on these things, these are 9,801 square feet right here. This probably is too. Maybe this is slightly bigger. Maybe there was a lot line adjustment done at one point in the past. So if we look at these, you can see that exactly what we're talking about with this standard was done in the past on these lots. You can see they were divided in half, right there, right there, right there, right there, right there, right there.
But not on the next one.
But not on the next block. Well, the reason that they did that back in the day is because it makes sense. You've got two streets, you can orient one unit to one, you can orient one unit to the other. So we see evidence of this approach done in the past. Another thing that I'll just point out is it's really interesting. You've got portions of the city where once the lots were created, when they built on them, they shifted the lots. So they essentially did a lot line adjustment and they shifted them 90 degrees, right? And so you can see like these two right here. Now this is interesting, and we always have troubles with this because we've got several of these in town. These are isolated then from the sewer right here, which runs down the alley. And so, but it's just, all of the lots were originally this way. They all ran sideways. But you can see over time, they've gradually changed little by little throughout the area. It's, what this is intended to do is to essentially take what was a good idea when they did it in 1995 and just essentially help it actually work better is what we're trying to do. And we're trying to say specifically when you're doing this, like actually take advantage of the resources that you have around you. Like an alley is a resource, you can use it to access a back of a lot. A corner lot is a resource, it has depth that you could put a second unit in.
So then I have a question, because it says in your paperwork here that it hasn't been widely used in Hills Edition. So are you getting requests for it in these other areas? Because if it's not even widely used in Hills Edition, what makes you think it's gonna be used anywhere else? And like, what does this look like as far as like tax impact and like who who's making those improvements in alleys? The new property owner, the person who's sectioning off their property? Like, I have costs for, questions that go with this as a person who owns a larger lot. Like, I would just as soon put an ADU in my backyard for one of my kids than section my property and have to fix the alley.
Right, well, so you could, you can absolutely put an ADU in the back of your lot. The question, who would pay for the alley would be the person who sectioned off their property. So that would be their thing. Imagine though, like, part of the benefit of this is, say you wanted to create a unit for a kid or whatever, or say you wanted to downsize, or say you wanted to pull some money off the lot. Imagine it's some like the only asset you have, basically. A lot of people have a lot of money into their land, into their house. Say you're looking to downsize or whatever it might be, you don't want to leave your house, but you'd like some extra income. You could go in, you could say, hey, I've got a street and I've got a corner, right? I'm on a corner lot, I know that I can split this in half. You could go through that process and split it in half. You could sell the back portion, and then you could take some money to help you stay longer in the house. So what the second question is, why aren't we seeing this more? I don't think it's widely known that it's out there. What is inspiring this change is specifically, we had a request outside of Hills Edition, same exact size lot, 9,801 square feet. I can look at it, I can say, oh, I see exactly where the house goes. Literally, there's more than enough land for a second house on the lot. Person came in and said, hey, I would like to divide my lot. And I said, I'm sorry, you don't have a 5,000 square foot lot. You can't divide it in half. The only way you could divide it in half is if you got 3 feet from your neighbor to the north. He said, I can't get 3 feet from the neighbor to the north because he's got his his accessory buildings right on the property line. So I can't buy 3 feet from him. I say, okay, then the one thing that you can do is you can try and attach a second unit to your existing house, right? Because we allow 2,500 square foot lots if they're attached units. But this house is like a 1960s kind of flat roof ranch style house. How are you gonna attach something new to something like that? You're not, it's gonna look crazy. And so I came upstairs and I was like, you know what? I just don't like that answer. It's not a good answer. It's not promoting a development that makes any bit of sense. I started talking with one of my colleagues about it. He says, you gonna stand for that? And I said, no. As a matter of fact, we shouldn't, because we want better development than that. We don't want people trying to piece together a house with another house, right? That's not good for either of the folks that are gonna be living there long term. And so, sort of coming out of that, I started looking at this section again, and I thought, you know what, there's a whole bunch of lots that could potentially benefit from this approach. And that's why the change is proposed. And it's specifically like a release valve, or essentially for folks that are in a similar situation. Now, I'll just say there's lots of opportunity still for review. As this is written, this would still go to the Planning Commission for their review. If this occurred in the historic district, they would have to go to the Planning Commission to create the lot, and they would have to go to you folks for any new development on the lot. That's a fair amount of public review for anything that would occur there.
So then how is it, well, I mean, like, the sewer system is,
It's a big deal.
it's a big deal, and we're talking about splitting lots and adding all these houses, and we still don't even have a sewer system that's up to date. So how does that play into it?
All development is required to pay SDCs.
Yeah, I heard that before from the city manager, I don't know, like 3 or 4 city managers ago, about how the apartments and the hotel and all these things were gonna pay for the sewer system to be updated, and that hasn't happened. So I get that there are fees that people have to pay, and there's all kinds of fun, you know, just licensing and all that stuff, but it didn't happen before, so how are we gonna say, like, if people are just splitting their lots and putting additional homes when it didn't happen with these? Like, I've already heard that story, and so it makes me really cautious to, you know, to just say, oh, well, they have to pay fees, so do they.
Right. So, I mean, our SDC fees have recently gone up.
Yeah, how much did they go up to?
25,000
or something.
I would say it's higher than that, I don't know the exact amount.
I will say that there's a housing crisis, and so there is a need for smaller homes. And as things become more expensive, it makes sense for families to combine the multi-generation, right? Generational housing. So I lean towards it because of that, but I believe that Jennifer Flores has a really good point that, you know, there's only so much water and there's only so much, our infrastructure that we have with our sewer system is probably not ideal for the building, but what you're talking about is the fact that this is already in place, right?
And the historic district.
And you're trying to improve what's there
Who's trying to extend it from Hill Division?
slightly. How much bigger is it getting?
Well, it would then apply to the whole city, and so you can see in this map,
Oh, so the one that's on the map is the current one, but you're gonna apply it to the whole city?
right, and you can
Okay.
see the additional lots that would benefit from it. So they're marked in
The gray.
The dark gray.
the dark
Okay.
gray.
I disagree with and I've already expressed this to you, but the alleyway and the person only having to pave a portion of the alleyway. For instance, Jennifer and I share an alleyway, and the over on the one right next to it on the corner where, what's going in there, what's the name of it? So I know how to reference it.
Oh, I don't, it's I was calling it like 478 South Main, but it's like Brad Harris's
Okay.
project.
Anyways, their parking is clear that whoever's gonna be parking and utilizing that isn't gonna just use the new portion that they're paving. It's likely gonna be the entire alleyway, and so I think that that needs to be thought about a little bit more. Because I have that insight, you know, that perspective from being on an alleyway. And so I don't know if there's a possibility that could change. So this opens up a whole bunch of conversations and questions.
Yeah, because if you have, like, you look up here on, I think it's 10th Street, 10th between E and Randall, you have 4 grayed out houses, you know, and so those 2 in the center, plus the one on 9th Street that's in the middle, if they're looking at alley access, and only those middle properties split, then are only the middle properties supposed to improve the alleyway, and the end properties are gonna still be gravelled off?
No, so it's from specifically the street that they're taking access from to the far edge of their property.
I think that the alley access has to be really heavily controlled. Alleys aren't wide enough,
Right.
number
It
one,
need to be one way.
and there has to be setback to permit enough parking. I've lived in cities where they've allowed this type of thing, and it's a disaster. You have cars parked in such a way that people can't get by, all sorts of problems. So I think that there has to be adequate setback to provide garage and adequate driveway space to park cars. There has to be a lot of things,
I think we see that at 4th of July a lot.
yeah, that are
Because our
trying to be
alleys get
included
so
in this type
full.
of thing.
It definitely need to be one way.
Yeah, has the city ever thought about making alleys one way, just directional?
No, partially because we haven't seen a lot of traffic on alleys, and I mean, I don't think that we're gonna see a whole lot of traffic from stuff like this too. We're talking about like creating one, maybe, I mean, again, this hasn't been used widely. And if you anticipate, say, one or two in alley, you're gonna have onesie, twosie traffic, coming in and out. In terms of the parking and whatnot, all of the units that are gonna be created will still need to meet our parking standards.
Which is a garage, is that correct?
It's not a garage anymore, it's either a garage and one spot outside of the garage, or carport and one spot outside, essentially 19-foot paved surface, or two, essentially paved parking spots. So it essentially comes out to two for every unit as it's written right now.
Well, the one that I was just referring to, it's not gonna be just one or two houses, right?
Yeah.
And so if you look at that alleyway and you think about someone, just one person coming down, there's not really anywhere for the person that's already in the alleyway to go. And so maybe there needs to be something written for alleyways that are gonna be more than.
Right, and I think that makes sense for instances like that.
I don't quite understand here, you're talking about, using alleyways for
The backup,
the,
the back one, getting into the back one.
yeah, and if you look at D and 6th Street, their sewer system, if they were to change any of those, their sewer system, they would have to go, to the person,
through the created lot,
yes, over towards, where did it go?
to the alley. It would have to go under the new property that was created into the alley.
Okay,
With an easement.
With the easement, that's actually one of the requirements, it says.
yeah,
You
so
have
they
to,
have to go, backwards to, and then sometimes they have to go through that person's, the next person's.
Happens a lot in Independence, actually, because I see a lot of sewer scopes, and there's a lot of homes in Independence where it goes into somebody else's lot.
well, it's all of the ones that got shifted 90, you know, so when you see them oriented to D and E and whatnot, and it's on a corner, I can almost guarantee it's going through somebody else's property to get to the
Right.
alley.
Yeah,
Yeah, but if it's oriented this way towards the numbered streets, then probably it doesn't have to go, through somebody else's
but
property.
it cost my neighbor $20,000, and it cost me $15,000 just to go down to, E Street, because there wasn't any other place unless I wanted to go through somebody else's yard.
Right, and that's specifically that's when it talks about easements here, like, you're gonna have to, if you're gonna wanna do this, you're gotta have to make sure that you're recording easements, make sure that you've got water and sewer going to the site.
Under somebody else's property.
Right, yeah,
But not under
not under that house.
not under a they can't build over it. So they're,
Well, that's it, and that was, who's to say that if, somebody else comes along 20 years from now and decides to build,
That's why an easement would be recorded on
and somebody can't read.
it. Well,
I mean,
I mean,
somebody decides on a
plan.
Sunday afternoon, they decide they want to put up a shed.
right,
It's on the general title of the property, and it's public record with the county, it's pretty
yeah, I mean,
It just doesn't.
clear.
So don't all lots have a 5-foot utility easement around each side of them?
No,
I
because
don't
there's
think so.
Okay.
no, there's no utility.
I don't,
So
So, you know, we are requiring more and more public utility easements, but it's typically only on the street side.
So what you're looking for essentially in this, or what the planning commission or the city council, is just that we extend the borders of the existing variance from Hills Edition to the additional additions that were listed.
Because they already meet the square footage requirement.
I mean, we've had a ton of discussion. Does anyone care to make a motion to approve or deny?
I just want to be able
Do
to
you
sit
wanna
down
have more?
and read it, because I just, I mean, I got it.
So you want to have more time?
Yeah, I got it a half hour before.
So Fred, do you think that the existing setbacks and parking requirements are sufficient to allow alleys to be used in this way?
Yeah, I mean, let's just take the example of the 9,801 square foot lot of the guy that came in. My answer to him was, you could do a second home on your lot, but you gotta get 3 feet from your neighbor. What's 3 feet gonna do for anything, you know? It seems that you could equally design a structure to work on a lot that's smaller, yeah.
So like, I'm getting this, that this just makes it more equitable to the whole town. Like, we already do this, so now it'll just apply to the whole town equally.
Yeah, I mean, this will give folks the opportunity to utilize this in other portions of the town.
And there's lots of checks and balances in place.
As
Yeah,
long as they're, is big enough to allow.
yeah, as long as their lot is, and the lot would still need to be 4,500 square feet. So it's 500 square feet less.
And we do that because our town was laid out that way, and so we have to make concessions.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, somebody way back in 1995 thought that this was a good idea, and they actually, they wrote this variance specifically for one portion of the town, but when we look at it, we can see, oh shoot, there's other portions of the town that could equally benefit from this.
Why would they have limited it to that one section when there's other lots that are that size? I mean, it makes sense. Was it your job to go and check for any lots that were that size and put that little gray box around?
That was GIS just doing it for me.
Oh, that's nice. Wait, what's GIS?
Geographic Information Systems is just, it's the computer program that we make maps with.
So do you still feel like we need more time? It's okay if you do.
I do. Just,
So then can we,
is that all right?
I think Karen, am I supposed to take it back to the council at their next meeting, or at their meeting in May?
I don't remember when it was supposed to come back. I don't know,
I think it was at
I'll
their
have to
next regularly scheduled meeting.
I don't know that they specified that. Let me know.
because they have 2 meetings a month, right?
Well, you can go ahead and I'll just excuse myself because I don't have enough, I don't feel like I know enough without really reading
Do we have enough votes for it, I mean, we don't have to have a unanimous, do we?
I don't even know if you folks need to vote on it. Like, I mean, they didn't specifically tell, I mean, this isn't a public hearing.
Right.
They wanted your feedback about or if you had concerns with adopting this, they wanted to know. They asked specifically, like, have you asked the Historic Preservation Commission? And my response was, well, shoot, it already applies to the vast majority of the district, which is why I didn't bring it to you folks originally. And they said, hey, we'd still like you to ask.
So then we know our concerns are infrastructure, access, parking.
I think that's like the planning commission's.
Right, so they're asking for our concerns, so, you know, if we're just needing to record what our concerns are, I mean, were there more than those? The infrastructure, sewer access, the alleys, the parking? Was there anything else?
How the pavement thing. One ways.
Sidewalks.
Pavement, one ways.
One-way alleys? So if you're just tasked with taking back our concerns, then those are our concerns.
Yeah,
If it's outside historic district, then we don't really have say, right?
Not really. I mean, your purview is the historic district.
Do we know how, excuse me, do we know how much of the infrastructure has been updated in this particular hills area?
I don't, not right offhand. I know, and I don't, not right offhand.
Okay, well, if you just needed our input and our concerns, then we have those. Does anyone else have any discussion?
I just-
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I just want to make sure I get these down in a minute. So the concerns were infrastructure, sewer access, parking, paving a portion of the alley, and alleys as a one-way.
Yes. If there's no more discussion, and are we good if we adjourn? Well, I could take a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Meeting adjourned.
All right.